Greetings and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. I'm the Reverend Christian Schmidt, interim minister of this congregation. Now, whether this is your first time with us or your 1001st, know you are welcome here and we're glad to have you. As our church's mission states, we are a community dedicated to welcoming the stranger, working for justice, and supporting one another. Though safety issues continue to prevent us from gathering together in person, we are glad we can provide this forum to find comfort and recommit ourselves to the mission of supporting one another in our spiritual journeys, working for care of the earth and building the common good. We gather to recommit ourselves to dismantling systems of oppression and injustice. It is good to be together. I have a few very quick announcements for you. The first is that today, weather permitting, we're having an outdoor service at 4 p.m. on the terrace. If the weather is bad, we'll probably be moving to the boxwood garden where a tent is set up. At 12:30, there's Paint the Parking Lot, again, assuming it's not raining. Kids, people of all ages are welcome to come out and paint our parking lot because starting tomorrow, we're ripping up the parking lot and redoing it. We're going to have a beautiful new parking lot, but in the meantime, you're welcome to come paint whatever things you want on it. It was a lot of fun last week. I came with my children and had a lot of fun painting. Now for the service today, we ask you to turn off your cameras and Zoom so that we can all focus on the service. Afterwards, we'll invite you to turn your cameras on so that you can see each other and give a virtual hug and wave, that is. Lastly, please continue to look to all your communications devices, to emails and phones, and to our website for continued updates about worship and other church happenings during this time. If you are ever in need, please feel free to contact our church staff. While the parking lot project is going on, they'll mostly be working from home, but they'll still be checking email and phones. I invite you now to take a deep breath with me as we enter into this time of worship.
Listen, the Spirit is Calling by John Saxon. Listen, can you hear it? The Spirit is calling. It calls us in the silence and through the noise and busyness of our daily lives. It calls us in the brightness of the day and the darkness of the night, in times of hope and despair. Listen, can you hear it? The Spirit is calling. It doesn't matter what you call it, for it has no name and has many different names. The Spirit of life, the Spirit of love, the Spirit of compassion, the Spirit of hope, the Spirit of justice. Listen. Can you hear it? The Spirit is calling. It's calling to you and to me. It's calling us to greater wholeness, greater connection, greater service, greater love. It's calling us to heal the brokenness within ourselves, in others, and in the world. It's calling us to live more deeply. It's calling us to beauty. It's calling us to laugh and dance and sing. It's calling us to live through life's pain and sorrow. It's calling us to live courageously and kindly, to speak our truth in love, and to bend the moral arc of the universe toward justice. It's calling us into community. It's calling us into the greater life of all. Listen. Can you hear it? The Spirit is calling. Amen.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'd like you to turn in your gray hymnals to hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. Gather the Spirit, harvest harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Will you join me in the covenant of the Mount Vernon Unitarian Church, which unites us in fellowship? Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is our prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life and community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
Good morning. It's me, Miss Ann. And guess what? Somebody put a box on my desk. I wonder what could be in this box. It's a little bit light. I wonder if it could be a pillow. You know, sometimes when I get something like in the mail, before I open it, I like to think a little bit about what could be inside. It's almost like getting a present. I wonder what could be inside this box. It's about the size of maybe a big toaster. Do you think there could be a big toaster in this box? Well, it's a little light. Sounds a little bit empty. Maybe it's not full. I'm curious. I want to know what's in this box. But you know what? We have a lot to do today. We have a service ahead of us with all kinds of things to do. So it's time to move on. What? Oh, you're curious too? You want to know what's in this box? Oh, okay. I understand. I'm a little curious myself. I like to ask questions and I like to know. So I'll open it for you. Oh, I know this thing. I know what this is in the box. It's okay. Everything's good. This is a good thing. Huh? What? Oh, you want to see it too? You're curious too? Oh, okay. I'll open it up for you. Inside this box, look, it's a kitty cat. This kitty cat's name is Schrodinger. Hi, Schrodinger. I'm glad you came today. Do you know why you came? Do you know why you're in this box on my desk? Oh, he doesn't know. I'll tell you what I think. You want to know? Oh, you're curious too. I think it's because there's an old saying. And in that saying, they say, curiosity killed a cat. Oh, no, don't worry, Schrodinger. Unitarian Universalists never hurt kitty cats. They always help kitty cats. So you don't have to worry. It's just a saying. Do you know what it means? Oh, I think it means that some people say if you ask too many questions, it could be dangerous. If you want to know too much, you could get hurt. Do you think that's true? It might be sometimes. But Unitarian Universalists feel like asking questions is a good thing and learning more is a good thing. You think so too? It's because Unitarian Universalists are curious. And you know what else? Yep, there's another half of that saying. That's right. The other half of that saying is, on the one hand, curiosity killed a cat, but on the other hand, satisfaction brought him back. I think that means if you want to know something, it can almost hurt because you really want to know. But once you find out, then you are satisfied. So if curiosity killed a cat, then satisfaction brought him back. Do you like that part? I bet you do. You must be a Unitarian Universalist kitty cat because you're curious too. Is that right? Oh, I'm so glad you came to visit us today, Schrodinger, because today the grown-ups are talking about curiosity, among other things. They're talking about wanting to know more. And we were curious about you in this box. We wanted to know what was in the box. And we didn't want to let it go. We didn't want to just walk away. We wanted to know what was in the box. And it was you. So then we were satisfied because we knew what was in the box. That's Unitarian Universalist. Can you say goodbye, Schrodinger? I'll say goodbye too. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Mount Vernon Unitarian Church continues to share the plate with committed organizations that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of October, our offering is being shared with Frog Pond Early Learning Center. Frog Pond is an inclusive, nonprofit early learning center with a science and nature focus that is dedicated to working families. They provide a nurturing and empowering environment that promotes the healthy social and emotional development of children from 16 months to pre-kindergarten. I invite this gathered community to offer whatever you are most comfortable with in the spirit of financial generosity for the mission of our church community. If you would like to write and mail a check for the offering, please make it out to MVUC and in the memo line indicate how you would like it to be used. You can also follow the link in the chat box to make a one-time or recurring payment. During this time of music, we invite you to tenderly name in the chat or in your heart the joys and sorrows that you hold within your heart.
Each week in our service, we set aside a time for quiet reflection and then prayer. I invite you to prepare yourself mentally and physically for this time. Get comfortable in your seat, get any wiggles out. Attempt to still your busy mind, and join me first in some moments of silence. Afterwards, I'll read a prayer by the Reverend Heather Bryan Starr. Join me in the silence now. Today's prayer is called, I Am Not Alone. There is a Love Holding Me. May I move gently through this cloudy, murky, gray day. May I remember this is just one day, and that showing up is at least half of what is asked of me. May I set aside my underlying anxiety that I will not get to everything, and put my trust and faith onto the riverbank of human community. We are working together. I am not alone. There is a love holding me that is unconcerned with my day's to-do list and more concerned with my spirit's survival, even its thriving in this beautiful, challenging world. May we all remember that Rome wasn't built in a day, that our efforts are part of an ongoing stream of efforts, of lives being lived beside one another, shoring up this world. May what little I do today be for the greater good. May I be gentle with others today as I long for others to be gentle with me. May it be so. Each week in our
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever A reading by Carl Gregg. When I was in seminary, and we would occasionally sleep in and skip a Sunday morning service, we would sometimes joke that we had attended the Church of the Holy Comforter, or the Church of the New York Times. Along these lines, Wendell Berry famously published a book titled A Timbered Choir, of poems inspired by long Sunday morning walks through the woods that he had taken instead of attending a religious service. And there have been times in my life when I needed to sleep in, go running, read the New York Times, or enjoy a leisurely brunch at the end of a long week instead of going to a religious service. In the 16th century, doubt and individualism were radical ideas. In the 21st century West, doubt and individualism are standard fare. And in our increasingly individualized world of computer screens and smartphones, the most radical choice is not individualized doubt, but choosing the hard work of being in diverse community. What is radical today is the move from dependence on our birth community through the struggle of individuation and independence to a mature, freely chosen interdependence that often only authentically comes on the far side of independence. In our time, that third step of moving from independence to interdependence is the radical part. As the late UU minister Forrest Church summarized, in developmental theory, the progression goes as follows: dependence, independence, interdependence. And to reflect some on how being both spiritual and religious relates to this move toward interdependence, the word religion comes from adding the Latin prefix re, meaning again, to the root ligare, meaning bind or connect. So the etymological root of the word religion means to bind together again or to reconnect. But if you are transitioning from the dependent stage of your life to an independent stage, then religion, especially certain forms of religion, can feel like a constricting attempt to bind you back into a role of dependence that you are doing your best to escape. From that place of longing for freedom and independence, you may find yourself declaring authentically that you are spiritual but not religious, at least not religious in this earlier dependent sense. Because being religious but not spiritual, blindly supporting institutionalized religion, is arguably far worse than being spiritual but not religious. But if you stay too long in that middle stage of spiritual but not religious, your self-made spirituality can devolve into an unhealthy narcissism of entitlement and self-involvement. Even more importantly, a prolonged fixation on independence can block you from being involved with the hard work of building community. And it is not isolated, independent individuals, but communities of people working together across diverse differences who most often transform this world for the better. A reading from Carl Gregg.
I have a friend who joked some time ago that she's religious but not spiritual. Now, if that makes sense to you, it's probably because you've heard it the other way around. There was a trend, perhaps some years ago, though it's still around, of people describing themselves as spiritual but not religious. Maybe you describe yourself that way, and that's great. It was briefly so popular that it was even abbreviated to SBNR, so you know it was a thing. Now, my friend's point was that she didn't know exactly what being spiritual meant, or perhaps that there are so many meanings people put into being spiritual that it wasn't clear to her. But she, one of my colleagues, an ordained minister, knows what being religious means. And for her, and for me too, that's found in a community of people engaging the same things, meeting for worship and fellowship, even if it's virtually like this, and doing the things that we try to do in this congregation and a lot of other congregations, more or less. I'm still engaging with the idea in my mind of spiritual but not religious, or really any of those combinations. The language around it has morphed and changed over the years. You may have heard the language of nones, as in those who choose none of the above when asked what their religion is on forms. Though the language changes, we're still grappling with this question. I have no doubt we have people here today in our gathering who might feel like none of the above describes them, or spiritual but not religious, or any of that language, perhaps your friends and family. And I observed that this SBNR, the spiritual but not religious crowd, is actually a number of different crowds. It's a pretty wide umbrella they're throwing. There might be people who are rightly leery of organized religion. Plenty of religious groups have given us reason to be leery. There are some who are just anti-religious. They don't like that at all. Some people who are unsure. Probably some who are avoiding the real growth that might come if they engaged more fully in things. And a dozen other stances, I'm sure. And so trying to say something about this can be difficult because we're talking about so many different things. There's the failure of organized religion to address real human needs too often. There's the conservative turn of a large part of U.S., and here I'm speaking mostly about Christian, religious figures in the last century. The rise of evangelicalism, for instance. Well, you could certainly see why people would be fed up with religion. And then there's an interesting and even somewhat strange history to the word spirituality, or spiritualism as it used to be known. These terms came to prominence about 150 years ago. They even spawned a spiritualist movement. There are still a handful of spiritualist churches around if you look hard enough. This was in the wake of the Civil War, in which so many people died. There were hardly any families in the United States that hadn't lost at least one person. And because of that, there was a desperate desire to connect with the dead in some meaningful way. It was grief on a scale that few of us can even imagine, though perhaps this pandemic is beginning to give us a glimpse. Now, back then, there was also a time where technology, you can think of things like photography and the telegraph, which had become popular just a couple decades earlier. These new technologies made people question just what might be possible. And so we saw the rise of things like seances and Ouija boards, because it seemed like it might really be possible to connect with the dead in those ways. The interesting thing for me is that quite a few universalists in particular were caught up in this spiritualist enthusiasm. They were really into it. Okay, that was a bit of an aside, but the term spirituality has changed and morphed since those days, and it retains something of that old meaning of connecting to something, perhaps a spirit, but something beyond our normal comprehension. And so these folks, the spiritual but not religious, retain that desire to make connection in what we might also call a religious way. You see this come out in many ways, in the fanatical support for certain musical groups, in the way people are obsessed with their gym, or their yoga group, or book club, or conventions for science fiction, or sports fandom. And all of these are fine things. I'm not saying they're not. They're good. They're wonderful. And all of them bear at least some of the marks we might traditionally have associated with religion. They can be identity forming. They can challenge us to grow and learn. They form communities. They're about connecting with something larger than ourselves. And of course, some people are spiritual but not religious when they can make those kind of connections outside of traditional religion. I can absolutely see that. Because people are desperate, and rightly so, to put their faith, or to put it a different way, their concern or energy or belief in something. There's nothing new about that. The Unitarian Universalist ethicist and theologian James Luther Adams famously observed that all people have faith, in his words. He said it's a matter, though, of what they have faith in. He spent quite a bit of time in Germany in the 1930s as the Nazis were increasingly coming to power, and he was rightly both disturbed and fascinated by them. In response to some religious and secular leaders who said the Nazis lacked faith, Adams pushed back. He said it takes an incredible amount of faith to do the horrific things the Nazis did, but it's faith in all the wrong things, in their own moral superiority, for one. And Adams said this is why we must be so careful what we place our faith in, because our faith placed in the wrong things, in nationalism or in false piety, in capitalism, in the gods of money and greed and purity and desire, this is where we go wrong. And so because of Adam's warning, I don't think it's safe or enough to put our faith into just any group or interest. We have to be careful. And so despite all of religion's many failings, I'm still a part of it, still an ordained minister in a religious tradition, still doing this thing we do every Sunday, though the methods may change, and during the week in between, still giving my faith and my support and my money to this little endeavor we call religious community. At its best, religious community directs us to the good. It warns us of idolatries of the spirit, opens us up beyond our tiny individual needs and wants and ideas. Because, as in our reading this morning, we're invited to consider something radical. That being spiritual and religious might be a deeper, more radical, more powerful stance. I'll let you in on a little secret here. If you're meeting with us right now, you're already in the religious camp. Maybe a different kind of religious than most people talk about, to be sure, but we're religious, and if you don't like being called religious, that's okay. I won't do it to you out in public or anything. But really, that is what we're doing here. Though Unitarian Universalism has not always had a cozy relationship with the label religion, but we're connecting with each other. We're trying to figure out how to live lives of meaning and purpose, and then actually go live those lives. We often acknowledge that though we value the individual highly, we also value the interconnected web of being that connects us, all and everything in the universe. We talk about how we're connected and how we affect each other. I love Martin Luther King Jr.'s phrase about the inescapable network of mutuality. At its best, and again, we fail to reach our best so often, but at our best, this is what religion is all about. It's where spirituality can sometimes fail. Because you can certainly go be spiritual all by yourself, but you can't be religious without a community. Even the great religious leaders of old who went off to be by themselves understood that that was only half the story. They were still connected to religious community. They came back. They had people come learn from them. They were never entirely alone. As the Reverend Peter Morales, the former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, puts it, we are desperate to experience connection. He wrote this short piece some years ago called Experience Connection. I want to read a bit of it to you. He writes, what does deep spirituality feel like to you? Spirituality is impossible to define, difficult to describe. For me, he writes, it feels like connection to myself, to others around me, to the earth and all creation. Connection to myself feels like deep peace, awareness, calm, authenticity. Connection to others feels like compassion, community, acceptance, and enduring love. We so very much need to experience our world, he continues. We need to let go of controlling our world and allow ourselves to become one with it. We find ourselves when we lose ourselves. So may we connect, really connect. Because when we do, it changes everything. And thus ends Peter's words. Friends, we're here to explore our spirituality in the context of our chosen faith, Unitarian Universalism. Together we can do and be more than any of us can be alone. Together we work to avoid putting our faith in the wrong things and work towards the beloved community together. So whether you consider yourself religious, spiritual, both, or neither, I'm glad you've joined us today. I hope you'll be back. May it be so.
Join me in singing number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Will you join me as we unite our voices to recite the words to extinguish our chalice, words known within our hearts and can be found displayed upon your screen? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, we are a diverse group of people with many ways of exploring religion and spirituality. This is our great strength, to have different views, different ideas, sharing with one another, learning from one another, being a part of a community. As we move through this interim time, may we be curious, grounded, and welcoming to all who come to us. Our worship is ended, and our service begins. Friends, we are a